Yes, sir. The one in the room. Does your buddy have one as well? Place your hands behind your back for you. All right, under arrest.
No problem. You don't find my gun.
Just multiple guns.
I got a stick. Yeah.
Cool.
Apple 1 to Wagoner.
Coach in extend. Oh, the driver told me.
The hip-hop world has seen its share of drama, but nothing prepared fans for the shocking arrest of King Harris. The son of legendary rapper T.I. news spread like wildfire, leaving fans stunned and critics buzzing. This wasn't just another celebrity headline, it was a story that struck at the heart of one of hip-hop's most famous families. King Harris, who had been steadily building a name for himself through music and his outspoken personality, suddenly found his future in jeopardy. For T.I., a man who built his empire on music, business, and family loyalty, the news hit harder than anyone could have imagined. The cameras were rolling, fans were refreshing their feeds every second, and the world waited to see not only the details of King's arrest, but also how his father would react. And when T.I.'s emotional response finally surfaced, it left everyone talking. This wasn't the confident, composed T.I. that fans had known for decades. This was a father, shaken to his core, devastated by the thought of his son behind bars. The question on everyone's lips became clear. What happened to King Harris? And how would T.I. cope with the most heartbreaking chapter of his family's story? The headlines hit like a thunderclap. King Harris, the son of rap icon T.I., had been arrested. For fans who have followed the Harris family over the years, the news felt surreal. King, once the bright-eyed kid seen on reality TV alongside his famous parents, had grown into a young man with dreams of his own. But the journey wasn't always smooth. Between controversial social media moments and brushes with public scrutiny, King had often found himself in the spotlight for reasons that sparked debate. Still, nothing compared to this, his arrest became the story no one expected. And the ripple effects reached far beyond just another celebrity scandal. The arrest, described as explosive by witnesses, reportedly involved a late-night altercation that spiraled out of control. Details flooded the internet in real-time police reports, blurry cell phone footage, and endless speculation. Some sources claimed King was at the wrong place at the wrong time, caught up in chaos that escalated too quickly. Others insisted this was a sign of deeper issues that had been building behind the scenes. Regardless of the version people believed, the image of King Harris being led away in handcuffs shocked the culture. Fans were stunned. Social media erupted with hashtags like #PrayForKingHarris and #FreeKing as supporters rallied to his side. Many expressed disbelief, recalling moments from years past when T.I. proudly shared his son's milestones. To them, King wasn't just a rapper's child, he was part of hip-hop's extended family. Someone they had watched grow up in front of the cameras. But while fans speculated and debated, the focus quickly turned to one man, T.I., known as the King of the South. T.I. has faced his own share of controversies and legal troubles over the years. He has also reinvented himself as a businessman, an actor, and above all, a father. His relationship with his children has always been central to his image, often showcased in interviews and reality television. So when the news of King's arrest broke, all eyes were on him. How would he respond? What would he say? The first reports of T.I.'s reaction painted a heartbreaking picture. Insiders described him as visibly shaken, collapsing into a chair as the news reached him. This wasn't just an artist dealing with bad press. This was a father watching his son face the harsh realities of the justice system. Sources close to the family said T.I. was devastated, overcome with emotion at the thought of King spending years behind bars. For someone who had fought hard to protect his children from the same mistakes he once made, this moment felt like his worst nightmare come true. Videos soon surfaced of T.I. outside the courthouse, his face etched with pain. Surrounded by cameras, he struggled to find the words. At one point, he simply shook his head, his voice breaking as he muttered, "That's my boy. That's my son." For fans, it was a rare glimpse behind the curtain. A reminder that behind the fame and fortune, I was still a father like any other, heartbroken, vulnerable, and desperate to protect his child. What made the situation even more intense was the speculation about the sentence. Reports suggested that King Harris could be facing up to 5 years in prison, depending on how the case unfolded. That possibility alone was enough to leave T.I. crushed. He had always spoken about wanting better for his kids, wanting them to avoid the pitfalls that plagued his own early years. Now it seemed like history might be repeating itself, and the weight of that realization was unbearable. Inside the family circle, emotions ran high. Tiny King's mother and T.I.'s longtime partner was said to be distraught, holding on to hope that the legal system would show mercy. Other siblings rushed to King's side, offering support and defending him publicly. The Harris family, long used to the pressures of living in the spotlight, now faced the most difficult chapter yet. Part 1 of this story set the stage for what would become one of the most talked about scandals of the year. King Harris's arrest was shocking enough, but T.I.'s reaction, collapsing in grief, his composure shattered, was what truly shook fans. It wasn't just about a celebrity caught in controversy. It was about a family torn apart, a father facing the possibility of losing his son to a system he had fought so hard to rise above. And as the cameras kept rolling, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a story about King Harris. It was a story about T.I., about fatherhood, about legacy, and about the devastating reality of watching your child's future hang in the balance. As King Harris sat behind bars, awaiting his hearing, the spotlight only grew brighter. News outlets replayed the footage of his arrest on a loop, while blogs dissected every possible angle. For fans, the burning question wasn't just what had happened that night, it was what would happen next. And when the judge finally announced that King could be facing a potential 5-year sentence, the story exploded even further. Inside the courtroom, the tension was thick. T.I. and Tiny sat quietly, surrounded by their family. T.I. wore a suit, his eyes dark and weary. The weight of the situation etched into his expression. Those in attendance described the room as hushed, almost suffocating as the charges were read. King appeared nervous, at times restless, but tried to keep a brave face. Still, the reality of the moment was undeniable. This was no longer gossip or speculation. This was the legal system in full force, and it was bearing down on a young man whose every move was magnified by fame. The judge's words landed like blows. 5 years was not a guaranteed sentence, but it was on the table. And that alone was enough to leave T.I. reeling. Reports claimed that as soon as the words were spoken, T.I. slumped forward, his hands covering his face. Some witnesses even described him as collapsing back into his chair, overcome by the weight of what he was hearing. The image of the rap legend, once seen as untouchable, reduced to a broken father, struck a chord with fans everywhere. Outside the courtroom, the world reacted instantly. Supporters gathered in the streets with signs reading #Free King Harris and Stand with T. Social media timelines filled with messages of encouragement, with fans reminding King to stay strong and calling on the justice system to show leniency. Many pointed to T.I.'s long history of mentoring young people and argued that King deserved the same chance at redemption his father had once been given. But not everyone was sympathetic. Critics pointed to King's past behavior on social media, his fiery personality, and his tendency to court controversy. They argued that the arrest was a wake-up call, and that fame shouldn't exempt him from consequences. This isn't about T.I., this is about accountability, one commentator said on a popular podcast. The debate quickly split the internet. Was King Harris the victim of a harsh system, or was this the price of poor decisions? Within the hip-hop community, reactions poured in from every corner. Some artists sent words of support directly to T.I., reminding him that he wasn't alone. "We've all made mistakes coming up. Prayers up for your boy," one rapper tweeted. Others used the moment as a cautionary tale, warning the younger generation to stay focused and avoid the pitfalls of street life. A veteran in the game went live on Instagram, saying, "This could be any of us. Fame don't protect you from the law. King's situation should be a lesson for everybody out here." For T.I., the hardest part wasn't just the public spectacle, it was the private guilt. Insiders close to the family revealed that he blamed himself for not doing enough to guide King away from trouble. Despite all the success, all the lessons, and all the warnings he had shared, he felt like he had failed in the most important role of all, being a father. His friends described him as inconsolable, pacing the halls at home, replaying old memories of King as a child, wondering where things had gone wrong. Tiny, meanwhile, tried to hold the family together. Her calm demeanor in public masked the storm she was battling inside. She was said to be King's biggest advocate, fighting behind the scenes for legal options, reaching out to lawyers, insisting that her son deserved a chance to prove himself. For her, King wasn't just a headline, he was her baby. The boy she had raised and loved, now facing a reality too heavy for any mother to bear. Too heavy for any mother to bear. The public response continued to fuel the narrative. Talk shows debated the case daily, while YouTube channels produced hour-long breakdowns of King's lifestyle, his choices, and his future. Some predicted he would serve a hard time, while others insisted he would be released on appeal. The uncertainty only added to the chaos, leaving fans hanging on every update. What made this chapter especially powerful was the way it humanized T.I. for years. He had been seen as a larger-than-life figure, rap mogul, a businessman, a cultural icon. But in that courtroom, he was just a father, watching helplessly as his son's future hung in the balance. His visible breakdown reminded fans that no amount of fame or money can shield you from heartbreak. And in that moment, the pain of one man became the pain of an entire community. By the end of the week, one thing was clear. The case of King Harris had become more than a legal issue. It had become a cultural conversation, one that touched on themes of family, responsibility, legacy, and the unforgiving weight of the justice system. And as T.I. wiped away tears outside the courthouse, the world couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would King find redemption, or was this the beginning of a darker chapter? In the weeks that followed King Harris' arrest and the devastating courtroom scene, the story refused to fade. Every entertainment outlet, every blog, and every fan page continued to cover the case daily. For the Harris family, however, the cameras only amplified the pain they were living behind closed doors. What had started as one explosive arrest had now spiraled into a defining chapter for both King and his father. T.I. At home, the atmosphere was heavy. T.I., usually composed and confident, was described as distant, moving through his house like a man carrying the weight of the world. Friends close to him admitted they had never seen him like this before. He had fought battles in music, in business, and even against the law. But watching his son face the same demons was something that shook him to his core. It's different when it's your kid, one insider shared. He's blaming himself every single day. For King, life behind bars was a jarring shift. The boy who had grown up in the limelight, surrounded by luxury and opportunity, now faced the cold reality of prison walls. Reports surfaced about him struggling to adapt, missing his family, and reflecting on his choices. Some claimed that he had moments of regret and clarity, while others said he was determined to show strength, refusing to let the situation break him. Either way, his story became a mirror for countless young men who had lost their way, reminding everyone that fame doesn't erase consequences. The hip-hop community continued to rally around the family. Major rappers sent public messages of support, while others quietly reached out to T.I. behind the scenes. One superstar even dedicated a performance to King, pausing mid-concert to shout out the Harris family and encourage fans to keep them in their prayers. These gestures, though small, carried immense weight for T.I., who leaned on the solidarity of his peers during some of his darkest days. Still, critics didn't hold back. Talk shows debated whether T.I.'s parenting played a role in King's troubles, sparking heated conversations about celebrity families and the challenges of raising children in the spotlight. Some argued that the Harris kids had been given too much too soon, while others defended T.I. fiercely, pointing out that every parent struggles, no matter their status. The criticism stung, but it also reminded the world that fame magnifies mistakes, turning private family struggles into public trials. Through it all, Tiny remained a pillar of strength. She was seen visiting King often, speaking with lawyers, and encouraging her family to stay united. Her resilience inspired fans, many of whom praised her for holding things together when everything seemed to be falling apart. She, too, carried pain, but her determination gave T.I. and King the courage to keep going. As time passed, the story began to shift from shock to reflection. Documentaries and podcasts picked up the narrative, framing King's arrest as part of a larger conversation about young men, fame, and the justice system. Journalists pointed out the parallels between T.I.'s past and King's present, asking whether history was repeating itself or whether this was the moment that could finally break the cycle. T.I., though devastated, eventually began to speak out. In an emotional interview, he admitted how hard it had been to watch his son go through this ordeal. His voice cracked as he said, "I've made mistakes, but I always hoped my kids wouldn't have to pay the same price. Seeing the King in this situation, it's my worst nightmare. But I'm not giving up on him. He's my son, and I'll fight for him every step of the way." Those words resonated deeply, reminding fans that beneath the celebrity persona was a father's unconditional love. For King, the possibility of 5 years in prison loomed like a shadow. Yet, in some ways, the arrest became a turning point. Letters from fans poured in, urging him to stay strong and learn from his mistakes. Mentors from the industry expressed interest in guiding him when he got out, offering opportunities to rebuild his name. Slowly but surely, the narrative began to shift from tragedy to potential redemption. The final chapter of this story was not written in courtrooms or headlines, but in the resilience of a family determined to stand together. T.I., once crushed by the weight of his son's arrest, began to find strength in his role as a father. King, once overwhelmed by the consequences of his actions, began to understand the gravity of his choices. And the fans, once divided, united in the hope that this painful chapter would not end in destruction, but in growth. By the end of Part 3, the world had learned something powerful. Behind every headline is a family. Behind every arrest is a father's tears. And behind every fall is the possibility of getting back up. King Harris' arrest shook everyone. But it was T.I.'s heartbreak and his refusal to give up on his son that truly defined the story. And that's the heartbreaking reality of this story. King Harris' arrest shook not only his family, but the entire hip-hop community, reminding everyone that no amount of fame or fortune can protect you from the consequences of your actions. But what truly struck fans wasn't just the charges or the headlines, it was T.I.'s raw, human reaction. Seeing a rap legend collapse under the weight of his son's mistakes reminded us all that behind the music and the success, he's still a father, still a man who feels the same pain every parent dreads down now. The question is, what happens next? Will King Harris use this moment as a turning point, a chance to grow and rebuild? Or will the weight of a 5-year sentence change his future forever? And what about T? Can he channel his heartbreak into guiding his son through the darkest chapter of his young life? We want to hear from you. Do you believe King deserves another chance? Was the judge's sentence fair, or was it too harsh? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we'll be reading them all. And if you felt the weight of this story, make sure you hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more deep dives into the moments shaping hip-hop today. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about headlines, it's about family, legacy, and the fight to rise after the fall.